Yeah, so just a bit of an overview for what we're going to be doing today. We're going to do a quick overview of the Forefront Fellowship. Then we're going to head into a conversation with some Forefront alumni who are on the call with us today. We're really excited to hear from. And then we're going to have a little Q&A session for any questions you might have, but feel free to add questions in the chat as the call goes on. Yeah, so really excited to see all these amazing answers in the chat. A lot about autonomy, independence, safety, respect, and a lot about like an ability to remain a part of your community and engage with your neighbors, which we really love to see, because it's a big part of the work we do here at UVF. So
Wonderful. So if you're new to Urban Design Forum, hi, welcome. We are a membership-based organization of over 1,000. We're close to 1,100 multidisciplinary civic leaders who work to design, build, and care for a better New York City. And we work in a lot of different ways. So you might have been a part of many of these different parts, like convenings and government partnerships and policy research and leadership development. And the Forefront Fellowship hits on those parts in particular. And so the Forefront Fellowship is an annual leadership development program that cultivates emerging leaders in urban design, development, policy, and advocacy, and much, much more. The spirit of Forefront is praxis. In other words, for us, it means grounding theoretical research by doing and taking action through an experiential learning approach. Forefront focuses on building community and collaboration, strengthening your skills, and developing original change-making projects that take on a challenge facing our city. So far, we've had over 190 fellows or Forefront alumni go through this program. We've worked with 9 different city agencies and offices. We currently have 7 residency projects that are from the that started during the Forefront Fellowship and have continued. And this is just in the last few years. We've been engaging over 300 stakeholders, but that number is likely much, much more. And we've also, the fellows have authored over just around 4 reports, published 4 reports. So lots of impact during the last, this is our 9th cycle now of the Forefront Fellowship.
Yeah, so each year the incoming Forefront topic is motivated and chosen by the UDF community and by the Forefront program's alumni. And this year, our fellows wanted to center older adults and their experience navigating the city, from its public spaces to its transportation to its housing, leading to this year's topic, lifelong. Yeah, older adults are a crucial part of New York City's population. They serve as caregivers, they're community leaders, and active participants in community life, among many, many other roles. And this research comes at an important time where the population of city residents who are at least 65 is growing fast and is expected to increase by about 40% between 2010 and 2040. So to continue accommodating the city's population as they age, the need for age-friendly approaches to public infrastructure becomes more apparent. In preparation for this influx in the older adult population, we must begin recognizing the best practices for facilitating aging outside of institutional care. This ensures that the city's older adults remain empowered to live independently through aging. And this process begins by exploring the accessibility of the city's housing programs and using this information gathered from the field. Fellows will then develop and recommend design interventions for city agencies, primarily the Department of Housing Preservation and Development. Yeah, and we also want to focus energy on marginalized groups such as LGBTQIA2S+ older adults, Black, Indigenous, people of color, those with disabilities, those experiencing homelessness, and we also want to pay attention to atypical family structures, such as intergenerational households, those headed by older adults, and those that depend on an older adult as a primary caregiver. Yeah, so we're going to turn over the conversation to you all now. And I want you all to take a minute to reflect and write in the chat again. A little answer to this question. Which areas in the city do you think older adults enjoy the most and why?
Let's take about a minute and then we'll review. Let's see, who's typing their answer to which areas in the city do you think older adults enjoy the most and why? Ooh. Mhm. Yes.
Right.
Yep. Definitely.
Yep.
A lot of people said open spaces, yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of community spaces, green spaces. Yeah, parks and plaza.
Oh, people watching? Who doesn't? Oh, my word. Oh, yes, I love if I don't gotta be nowhere at no particular time, I love taking the bus for so many reasons, including being able to see all the people that the subway is not accessible to, so love that.
Yeah, out front of their apartments.
Mm-hmm,
Very well.
wonderful. Thank you so much, y'all.
Nice. Yeah.
All right, so the Forefront Fellowship is divided into two phases. The first, which will take place during the fall, winter of this year, will be geared towards partnering with a city agency. And the second, which will take place during the winter and spring of next year, will be aimed towards independent team projects. We organized the fellowship in this way to explore how transformative change can occur both within city government and beyond. So phase one aims for fellows to examine best practices for aging in place in New York City. Through collaborating with the New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development, also known as HPD, fellows will develop recommendations to enhance HPD-funded developments for aging support. The key challenge during phase one is investigating both what currently is helping older adult housing become more age-friendly, while also learning how we can reimagine housing for older adults to strengthen communities. Essential to this research will be on-the-ground experience and observations through site visits and stakeholder conversations. In efforts to understand how to best support the independence of older adults and how they can be provided with holistic care. You'll learn how to communicate with different types of people that hold different levels of power. This includes interviewing policymakers, developers, service providers, and care workers, along with engaging directly with older adults. By learning more about their perspectives, we can better recognize their contributions and understand how to best support and welcome them in return. Fellows will synthesize best practices, areas for improvement, and qualitative data in order to develop design and programming recommendations, prompting HPD leaders and other city agencies to engage in further research and inform policy changes and housing design. Overall, the first phase deliverables not only provide tools that help our partner city agencies advance their goals, but that can also serve a broader impact on improving the city's support for older adults aging in place. Past deliverables from phase one have taken the form of toolkits, official guidelines, and comprehensive strategies. In phase one, you'll begin with a 2-day orientation in September, followed by a series of fieldwork and workshop days every 2 weeks. All phase one events are full day and in person, and on average, we ask fellows to commit about 4 to 8 hours per week outside of program dates to work on the project. By the end of phase one, many invest more time due to their personal dedication. We will take a reset and rest break for the holidays. Then we will begin with phase two.
Yeah, so once we arrive at phase two, the program shifts a little bit to focus on systems level approaches for the areas of improvement identified by your research during phase one. So phase two is the point of the program where each of the fellows are encouraged to explore areas of the fellowship's topic that they feel the most passionate about and connect with other fellows in the program who have similar interests. Fellows will form teams to develop an independent project related to these interests, of course, with continued support from our staff. So we're going to turn the conversation back to you once again, just to reflect for about a minute or so on what do you enjoy the most about working in a team setting, and what are some things that you hope to learn from your peers. So just take a minute or so to write a quick answer in the chat. Yeah. Ace, yeah. That's great. Nice, nice.
Yeah. Intersectionality, diverse perspectives.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm. Yes.
Definitely leaving your
Totally
bubble.
leaving the bubble,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, right. That's awesome. +1 on like all of these.
Yeah,
Love it.
these are all really great answers. Thanks for your engagement. Yeah, so in phase two, fellows will be forming teams, and to form these teams, fellows will choose small groups to work in that will each devise a specific focus area of their own definition. With the help of the UDF team, each team will be encouraged to partner with a community-based organization to work closely with throughout the entire project. And each team will also have access to a $2,000 budget for project funding. And at the end of all this hard work, teams will showcase their projects at a capstone event celebration, which is a super exciting event and a really nice chance to see all of the creativity that comes out of this fellowship. Yeah, projects from phase two can range from something like an educational exhibition to a place-based pilot program to a creative policy brief. And each cohort is encouraged to build upon their own diverse set of skills and interests to create a deliverable that is meaningful, exciting, and creative. On the screen right now, you'll see some examples of the deliverables from last year's Forefront program, Free to Grow. And just from glancing at these posters, you'll notice the diverse range of projects that come out of this program. The one in the middle was a board game that engaged youth in the design of public spaces called Build the Place Game, which is a project that the fellows are actually planning to continue working on into next year, which is exciting. Yeah, so the phase two calendar. Phase two begins with the retreat in early January, which is at this time, each team will set their goals for the fellowship and team processes and begin background research. And then during February and March, each team will attend evening workshops, connect with stakeholders, and make a decision on what their final product is going to look like. During April and May, fellows will continue attending these workshops and work to identify some important community collaborations, research, design, and prototypes necessary to execute the final projects. And yeah, evening events during phase 2, with exception to the retreat, usually run from about 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. And the commitment is about 4 to 8 hours a week, with some weeks being heavier than others, especially towards the end of the fellowship when the project is really coming to life. And then, yeah, as I mentioned before, phase 2 culminates with the capstone presentation on the evening of Thursday, June 12th. And this is where you'll have a chance to share all your hard work with our broad network, invited guests, and key decision makers.
So I hope that excites you all about being a part of a cohort that is dedicated to making New York City a more age-friendly place. And we really want you to apply. You are great. You're a great candidate already to apply. Let's talk a little bit about how to apply. So all you'll need is your resume or CV, a brief statement of interest, and a nominating letter. Now, the purpose of the nominating letter is to have an advocate for you who really wants to see you learn and grow, and someone who can speak to the growth that you'll have across the course of the fellowship. The applications are due Monday the 15th at the end of the day, or at the end of the night. And this fellowship is really ideally designed for folks who have 5 to 10 years of work experience, are really passionate or experienced, hopefully both, in older adults, and live and work in New York City. We're a very New York City focused program, although we do, of course, need to learn from other areas as well. So yeah, why should you apply? I hope this gets you excited about applying. Forefront gives you the opportunity to work collaboratively on an equity-based challenge facing our city. You get to develop a published project that is meaningful and creative. You get to build community in an interdisciplinary cohort and cultivate your leadership skills, while also during and after the Forefront Fellowship, you'll have continued investment from the UDF network of fellows. So I think it's even better to hear directly from fellows who were not coached to say anything in particular. They're gonna just share their honest responses to some questions that I have. But I'm so thrilled to introduce these 3 fabulous fellows, alumni. So I'll start with Astrid. Astrid is an urban designer planner working in the Urban Places group at Stantec, New York City. Rajesh has roots in Toronto and is a writer, facilitator, and community-centered design practitioner at 3x3 Design. And Emma is an architectural designer with a focus on community-based and cultural production. So thank you all for being here. Let me take a moment to get them pinned so that you can see them nice and clearly. Hey, okay. Oh, can I just put a spotlight? Does that work? Yay, great. Perfect. See, look at how lovely they are. Oh my goodness gracious. So sorry guys, you're gonna just have to look at me. Actually, let me, I was gonna have to just look at their faces and their screenshots, but let me just get out of here for a second. Stop share. Okay, yay, lovely. Let me pin myself too, so that I'm not just in the ether. Okay, yay, hello. So I wanted to start off with a question of, why did you 3 decide to apply to Forefront? Anybody jump in?
I could start. Hey y'all, I'm Astrid Maya. Yeah, I'm a planner and urban designer with Stantec Urban Places. When I first joined the New York City office, I was working in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I moved to New York City. And my supervisor actually encouraged me to apply to the Forefront Fellowship. There had been other people in my office who had done it before me. And I think her biggest aim was like, this is going to help you get very familiar with the way New York City works, with the way that the, city agencies collaborate with each other and how just things happen in New York City, which I was super out of the loop, being new to New York City. And she also mentioned this is a good way to meet other professionals in my network that I can learn from. And I was really excited because our year was waste. It was new loops. So that was something that I had done before in my grad school education and even a little bit during work. So I was like, yeah, let's try. And honestly, it was exactly what she said. I Today I know so much more about how New York City works. I understand it way better, and I do have a network of colleagues, friends, and just teammates that we are still collaborating even after our fellowship ended.
Thank you, Astra.
I can go next. Is my audio okay?
Yes, great.
Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Rajesh. I am a community centered designer at 3x3. And I actually just wrapped my fellowship with Forefront. So I think it was 2 weeks ago today, Kat, that we were like running around playing that capstone. So it feels very fresh in my mind, and it's so great to see so many other people here who are interested in jumping into this journey. I think very similar to Astrid, I was new to the city. I had just moved to New York last summer from Toronto and was feeling like a bit of a fish out of water and didn't know too many people. And also was seeking, I think, an opportunity that would really ground me in this work that I do here, outside of the work that I do at the office. And I think similar to Astrid, my colleagues at the office recommended that I reach out and apply. And I had been following the Urban Design Forum even in Canada. So I was very eager to see not just this great opportunity to meet people, but I think UDF is, I think, such a organization that are aligned with values wise, and I really appreciated their thoughtful approach to everyday city building projects. So I think jumped at the opportunity to be a part of something special. And I also think this focus that I think Kat mentioned earlier, which is this focus on praxis, is very unique. If you sort of play in this world a lot, this focus on like the experimental doing of this work and sort of working with peers from adjacent fields and not just meeting people, but I think this idea of skill sharing was really, really appealing to me, which I think we'll talk more about. Definitely was like, yeah, I'll send in an application, might as well.
Yay. I'm glad you did.
Just quickly, I guess. Yeah, so I was working as a designer at Rex on a project at the World Trade Center. And I think I had similar experiences of just feeling so isolated in the city, but not, I had friends, I had people I knew. I just didn't know any real New Yorkers. And that was really upsetting to me, especially when you're designing for, people in the city. And we always talked about how it's a public space and it should be, for the residents. And yet I didn't know any. And that really kind of weirded me out. But the opportunity at UDF is kind of just connecting people across, outside of the design bubble, outside of the architecture bubble, outside of the client sphere, outside of even government, and getting real people who were born and raised here into the room too. And so that was the powerful thing for me. And it changed everything about how I work in the city and how I design in it, because now it's just kind of took down this barrier. You're not on this pedestal as the architect or designer. You can be in the street, you can be anywhere, and you can make change that way just by talking to people. So it really redefined the role of what we can do and what kind of agency we have. And that was very formative at that, early point in my career.
Oh, wow, that's so lovely to hear. Oh, yay. I just want to quickly pause by saying I'm getting a couple of questions of saying, is this recording going to be shared afterwards? And absolutely, yes, it will be shared on and put on YouTube. So you'll get this recording. Okay, next question, back to the alumni. I'd love for you to share a little bit more about your phase two projects or your focus for phase two, and what are some of the things that you've learned from that experience of the independent kind of original projects that you worked on?
I could start sharing a little bit about ours because it's still ongoing. So I think the main thing about phase two is that you want to align with people that you met throughout phase one that you think you might have similar interests or similar objectives, or you can complement each other's skills too. And I think that was my aim when I was trying to see, okay, how do we work for phase two? What do we want to accomplish? My group was very much like, let's just do something, let's get something done. And I think it was very fuzzy at the beginning. What would that look like? But in the end, I'm really proud, not only of the outcome because it's a website and still being developed, which also is the first time we develop a website, which is a whole new different skill set. But also I think it's getting to that capstone point and understanding so much more about the topic that we wanted to look at. Things that individually can go back and inform our, jobs, but also the way, especially like I think all of us or most of us in the cohort are so much more conscious about waste and waste outcomes. And I mean it like we really live it. I've been to many of my former fellows' houses to visit, and they have 3, 4 streams of waste. Even like no one's looking, no one's, but they are doing exactly what, we were advocating to do. And that makes me feel really good about all the connections that we did. And throughout phase two also, I admire so many other teams and so many other teams projects that are also being developed through the residency now. And I think it's such a wonderful opportunity to just develop something and learn from others. My only advice is start thinking a little bit about that beforehand so that by the time it comes, you kind of know a little bit what you want to align with. And that's going to help develop your phase two project much more smoother, because the timeline, it might seem a lot, but it's not. It goes by really fast.
That is such a good point, though. Yeah, I think it's not that you need to have the skill set, like you to know how to do a website. It's that you need to have a shared ethos with the other group members and just kind of push towards it, I think. At least that's what we found. In our cohort, we were looking at unhoused populations and the shelter system, which was provocative to say the least. And I think I ended up in a group of people that were very upset about the system, some who had lived experience within it. And for that reason, our phase two project was kind of the antithesis of the phase one project, which I think is interesting. And you should keep it in mind how those two things relate, because phase one is about working within the system in a way. And for us, phase two is about just ripping it down. And that is something I'm still trying to work on. So yeah, I do think those projects, they stay with you, especially if you're doing something that you feel is really close to you. And I would recommend doing that. Make sure it's something that's going to affect you. And so for ours, we worked with a group of unhoused and formerly unhoused advocates in the city, and we used oral recordings that had been done, oral histories, and started to illustrate them and made an exhibition of them. And we put that up in the new museum on our capstone day. And having these politicians in New York City be confronted by the voices of people experiencing this particular housing issue, I think is just, yeah, it was really powerful for me. And so I'm very grateful that we had that opportunity. And that's the nice thing about UDF. It's like, yes, you have to play the game, which is what UDF's great at, but then you can, find a way to make it radical. And I would highly suggest that, don't stop pushing that envelope, because that I think is what this program is for.
Yeah, I think phase one is I think similar to what you were saying, Emma, which is like you get a you get a lay of the land. You're getting like current state, you know, and then I mean you're not just envisioning, you're thinking of like how can I completely tear this apart and start fresh if you need to. But I think the value of that structure with starting with phase one is that so many of us think that city building happens at our desks, and so many of us are not equipped or feel comfortable with talking to people on the ground, educators, advocates, and I think it really just gets you out of that shell to better understand the groups that you'll be coming to interface with throughout the process. Um, our year was focused on youth-based placemaking, so really fun project. And I think because it's an audience, it's a specific audience, you can kind of choose how to needle in terms of subject matter. And our team decided to, I think, focus on a really salient topic right now in the city, which is around like protecting libraries as these like really critical community pieces of infrastructure, but also to rethink them with young people at the helm of design and programming. And so really rethinking like how those spaces can be used for youth-led political education, collective education, and social connection, and even liberation was something that we really wanted to prioritize. And so our work, which is, our team is on a little bit of a hiatus right now, just because we're taking a bit of a breather, but really looking forward to continuing this work. We partnered with the Free Black Women's Library over our sort of phase two time to run these youth-led workshops and build up a few different things, open source arts curriculum, and as well as sort of these youth-led design guidelines. And I also want to just hit the note that this is a project experience where you are encouraged to experiment, and to really sharpen your ambiguity tolerance through phase two. So try and do, I agree with what I've heard, which is like come in with maybe a rough idea, but what I ended up doing is so completely not what I thought I would be doing when I started in September. So, I mean, have maybe the values that you want to like have shine through with your work. But I think a big part of this experience is just being open to not knowing what the outcome will look like when you start something and being comfortable with that. And I think that's where the fun comes from, and also some of the stress comes from. But yeah, I think we experimented with art making as a research modality in particular, which is not something I had done before. And I think similar to my fellow alumni's experiences, it's like all about finding those moments to really come together and think, but also just focus on like, let's just do and see where we go.
Oh my goodness. I'm so glad this is being recorded because I want to hear all of this again. I think my last question, and then I'll open it up for Q&A, is what's one thing that you'd want someone to know before applying to the fellowship, or what's your like piece of like wisdom that you want to share with prospective fellows?
I could just, the best thing that happened because I was part of the fellowship, my personal experience is to create that feeling of community. I think that is, we tend to forget a little about that because now we have, social media, internet, so we tend to feel like we are connected to the world and to our friends, even from far away. But I just really want to emphasize, especially after the pandemic, how much this in-person collaboration with like-minded people, people that you can learn from, people that you can give something to also, like maybe you have some expertise in something and they were looking to learn from that, or outside collaborations too. You get to meet people that you might have similar interests and maybe you want to do something together for some other activist or whatever purpose that you might feel very, very strongly towards. So I think to me, being part of the fellowship was just the beginning of building that community, which feels really, really good. Even as an adult, you don't get as many chances to make new friends as you did when you were, a kid. And it becomes harder and harder the older you become to make new friends, friends that might be completely outside of your circle or completely outside of your field. And so I think that's the diversity that makes this community so wonderful. So that's my biggest takeaway of fellowship. Um, I know people that I can always tap and like, hey, I need something, you need something. We're always there for each other. Um, Urban Design Forum is also there for us too. Many times we've needed some support on other pursuits that we have, our passions, our own little efforts, and they are always there, like really, really ready to support you in your teams and your groups. So I think it's rare these days to find a place like that. And out of all the organizations out there, I think Urban Design Forum does that very, very well.
Yeah, I also want to, I mean, that's honestly amazing. Yes, you should know you're in it for the long haul. Once you're a fellow, you're in the club. And we spend a lot of time, I guess, going to events together and doing things. And it's been one of the most, yeah, strong families that I have in the city. The other thing I want to tell you is just that it's a unique opportunity to have this particular platform to take advantage of and to reach out to people that you wouldn't normally have a reason to reach out to in, in government or in the city, just important people that you want to talk to. This program is a really good way to do that. And, everyone will help you get to those people. So you can make a lot out of it. And I would just encourage you to sky's the limit if you're gonna do it. Try anything. There's no failure possible. So it's a really unique, opportunity.
Yeah, I think see this as like the start of something versus like, this is the last sort of program that you do. And I think really look at this as, I mean, not to hit this word, but a lifelong experience that you're probably going to be tapping into. And I also maybe this is just because I'm coming in as the freshest alumna, but yeah, I mean, do think about the time intensity, because I do think there's a level of accountability that you need to structure your year around when it comes to the program, and really think about, how can you show up for this program in a way that's not just about you sort of receiving, but also like what you can give, and just think about sort of what that looks like for you for this year, because it is, at times can be a lot. And I also think that on the plus side, the support is there for you on the program administration piece. But the program is also designed to be super flexible, and you can plug in however you want in whichever sort of whichever way you would like to. And I think through those sort of goals of your own and think about how you want to activate throughout the experience is what I would encourage everyone here to do. But also just apply, you can make it your own. So I don't see any reason to not be a part of the year. Yeah.
Thank you so much, you guys, you three. Oh my gosh. Let's give another round of love and hearts and claps and all the things to Astrid, Rajesh, and Emma for sharing their experiences and for doing it. They did the thing, y'all. They did it. And are such, we're better as a city for these three being a part of the world. So just so grateful to you three. I love them all very much. So yeah, you three are welcome to stay, but I know, Jace, you had like people you were pointing to, so if you need to go. But I think we'll open it up I'll take the spotlight off unless people have specific questions, but I think we'll take the spotlight off and how do I do that? Here we go. And then we'll do some Q&A. So for the Q&A, I'd love it if you could raise your hand, or we already have a bunch of questions in the chat, so we can also start from there. But if you have something that you'd like to say for the whole group, let me also remove spotlight on me. Okay, great. Yeah, so time for questions. Please feel free to raise your hand, or we can start going through the chat and taking a look at what questions are coming up for you. I don't know, Ava, if you saw any that are coming up. Okay, here's a question from Kristen. In addition to the time and effort commitment, what other resources should applicants be thinking about to assess whether they can commit any financial costs to participate? These projects are so exciting. Thank you for sharing. Yes, such a great question. So that time commitment is definitely the top one. We're also asking this year for folks to join as UDF members, which is sliding scale. So you can become a member for as little as $1 to as much as you can provide or share with UDF. And that is an effort to just make you feel like you are a part of the greater UDF network. And also this year, in terms of resources that we want to be able to provide, is we want to offer a very modest stipend for dependent care costs. So we really want to encourage folks who either care for an older adult or a young person in their life, and they're a dependent dependent of yours. We want to offer a dependent stipend that we'll talk about more after you're accepted. It's not a part of the application process. You don't need to tell us at the application moment whether you need dependent care costs or not, but that's more something that we'll talk about once you're accepted, of how can we help you show up as best as you can for the time that you dedicate. Right now, we don't offer general stipends to the fellows, but that's something that is definitely in top of mind for us, because we want you to be able to participate and be as equitable as possible. So that's something definitely in the works, but just not at this time. Yes, we're definitely going to be sharing all of this with anybody who registered, and then you can share all of those resources with whoever you'd like. You'll be getting the recording of this and also the application link and all that good stuff. Another question that someone asked was, is phase one more of an independent or individual body of work? That's actually, it's you all as a cohort working together as essentially one big team to author a report or a set of guidelines or something like that. That's still being developed, but you actually, all of the fellows will co-author a report as part of phase one. And then phase two is where you'll break off into teams, 4 teams this year, to be a part of creating your own body of work that you develop as a team, if that makes sense. Okay, someone asked if you've been working longer than 10 years. Yes. So the guideline that we have is 5 to 10 years, just because we find that that's where folks are able to contribute and learn the most. And we really want this to be a leadership development program, but it's definitely not a hard and fast rule. Like, there have been several people who have switched careers throughout their time and are emerging leaders. And it's definitely not like a firm if you've been working longer than, anything like that. So that's just a general guideline. Anybody else who wants to raise their hand and share? I can keep going through the Q&A or through the chat, but does anybody want to? I also see a lot of people saying thank you for the alumni panel. So shout out to y'all. Anybody else want to, I can keep going through the chat, but anyone wanna raise their hand and share a question? Bless you. Oh, Amber. Oh, wow, Amber. Hey, Amber.
Hi, Kat. So nice to see you.
Oh, hi. I'm so glad you're here.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you all for hosting and sharing this wonderful information. I have one question, and maybe Emma, you can help me with it, especially related to your project in particular. But in the outside of the report, if there are other components of the project, may it be photographs, interviews, oral histories, etc., how will those be archived, and where do they live? Yeah, where do they live after the program? And maybe if you can, well, we have 5 minutes left. I could, but anyway, sorry. That's the gist of the question. Where do the materials live after the project and program? But I mean fellowship.
Okay, I mean, at least I think you guys are still doing the publications, right, Kat? Yeah, okay, so anything that is print will go into a nice fancy book that UDF makes every year, which is lovely, and live on their website. And I do believe there is the possibility of having alternate media types in the digital form, probably. As far as our exhibition, we have been talking about traveling it for a long time, but it would take a lot of work, and it's probably something for the Forefront Fellowship residency in the future, because we do want it to live on. But as of now, you know, for example, the interviews are part of the Picture the Homeless Oral History Project, which lives on without us. Of course, we were just doing some illustrations, but we made all those available to the nonprofits that were working with them. And so they're kind of, you know, they're in their court actually, and also online. But yeah, I think it's really up to you what you want to do with the products of your fellowship. And of course, any of your community partners, it's up to them too. So it seems like it'll be on a case-by-case basis, but I'm sure UDF would support in any way possible to amplify those.
Yeah, totally echo that. Every team gets a web page that they can use just as the permanent site for all of their resources that they develop, or as a starting off point for example, like Astrid's team has a web page on commercial organics, their project, but also we're developing a separate website, and we helped fund that separate website. So it's, yeah, I agree with Emma that it's up to you about how you want to allow those materials to live on. With Jay, their team, his team is working on and has an open source curriculum that's going to be available to all sorts of folks who want to use it. So that's going to live on as an open source curriculum. So and the zine and the Teen Zine Library is living online right now. So yeah.
Yeah, if I
Oh yeah, go ahead, Astrid.
just want to add that also, we all had this Google Drive for all of our phase 2 projects. So we uploaded a lot, probably a lot, if not all of our files and everything that we're working on. So that is also something that other teams in our cohort could access and vice versa. So that is another way that, you know, we can all feed off of each other's research and materials as well. Of course, you can decide to upload more or less, but I think our personal team choice was sort of like, that is our central location to store everything.
Great, thank you. Before I go to Mark, I just want to quickly answer this question in the chat. Are the dates fixed? And yes, those are really important, that you make sure that those dates are set in your calendar if you decide to apply. You are able to miss up to 2 dates per phase, but we really find that the more you're able to show up for each other, the easier it is for all of us to hold each other accountable to what we say we want to do. So those dates are really important and necessary to come to. And I also saw a really great question of, are older adults being involved in the planning and running of the fellowship? And that's definitely yes. We right now are not older adults, so not yet. So we definitely want to, we're in the process right now of speaking to a bunch of stakeholders who are super excited about helping us shape the program. And we have so many advisors who work directly with older adults or who are older adults themselves. But that's definitely centering the community that we're working with is definitely really, really important to the fellowship. We have time for one more question. I'm going to throw it over to Mark.
Hey, how you doing today? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Okay, yeah, I was just going to say, I was just listening to the conversation, particularly, just one comment, the conversation particularly between interacting with city agencies and being a veteran of that. I know that it's often a challenge and it's often very nuclear and siloed, to say the least. And I find, the hardest part is when you do get to interact with an agency, it's often very productive and beneficial, but then the black hole opens up and they all get sucked back in, and then it's often to never be seen again. I mean, so many times I have, I see names in either forums or wherever out there and go, oh, I know that person, but they've often moved on to another city, another location, starting a family, doing whatever. Anyways, I just want to say the reality speaks to a whole different experience oftentimes, but that's something you learn as you go along to deal with. But specifically, my question is I noticed on the schedule in May, you have the workshops, and are they required to be virtual or in person or hybrid, or what's the requirement for that?
For now, we ask that all of our workshops are in person. And we want to make it as accessible as possible to folks. But they are all at this point going to be in person. And in phase 2, they're mostly evening programs. And in the fall, it's mostly throughout the day program.
But in May specifically, they're in person?
Yes, they're
yeah, that's might be a problem for me because I'm usually away in May. So
if you want to talk more offline about that, happy to
yeah,
brainstorm.
right.
Like if that's the only time that you can't do that in person. But I also want to just echo that, yeah, working with city, I mean, there's people in the audience right now who work with city agencies, and
I know I don't mean
we
to come
know that
across
they're-
as jaded
no,
or anything,
no,
but
not at
it's
all.
just
Like there's so many great people working in city agencies, and I think we find that folks who are from a city agency apply to a program like this to like add additional kind of pressure to their city agency.
Yeah. By the way, sorry to interrupt. I have one more question. Are there ever any issues of like conflict of interest? Being that I'm a community servant, these things crop up, and if that ever becomes an issue, or is that just something you don't, as an organization, you basically the onus is on the fellow to deal with those things?
Yeah, we haven't had any issues like that,
Okay.
any conflict of interest, but if that's of a concern for you, we can definitely talk about it.
Sure.
Happy to talk offline about it. Okay, we're over time. I'm sorry.
But thank you so much, really. It's really,
Thank
this
you,
was
Mark.
incredibly helpful. Thank you.
Great, good to hear, good to hear. Thank you all so much. I know some folks have to go, but thank you all so much for joining us tonight. Oh my word, you already know where I'm at today. And I look forward to seeing you in the future. Come to our events, come to our things, apply. And thank you again for joining. So grateful that you spent some time with us today.